come to order. Welcome and thank you all for coming today. I'm very excited to be here in my home state of Pennsylvania in my home district. A special thanks to Councilman Eister and the City of Sunbury for hosting today. I hope to accomplish two critical things this morning. First, to connect key resources to our community leaders in an effort to help reduce the risk and cost of flooding to our communities, businesses, and our neighbors. Second, to hear from you as leaders and policymakers to understand your challenges and concerns to see if there are changes we can make in Washington to address the rising cost of disasters. This is of special interest to us as we deal here with constant threat of flooding. Right after I became a member of Congress, this district was hit hard by Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee. The Commonwealth experienced about $1 billion in damages from those two storms. I saw people lose their homes and their irreplaceable possessions. I've seen communities struggle, rebuild, and businesses reopen. You know, that really changed the focus for me personally as a new member of Congress. As I drove home back to this district and saw what happened, I immediately called down to Washington and asked my staff to come back home there. As a mayor of Hazleton, I was very familiar with having a disaster plan in place and what you need to do, especially critically in those first couple hours when people don't know where to go, what to do. And we immediately set up posts around the district to try to help residents deal with those first few hours until we had in place the help that they would need. But we went further than that. We stayed. We didn't go home, and we actually helped people carry their life's possessions out to the sidewalk. I remember being in Shikshinny or in Plymouth and watching an elderly man cry as he stood on a porch after losing everything, telling me that he didn't want to go back into his home again. I went down the street and saw a young man who was just married, also in tears, as they were just getting started, losing everything that they had. And I realized that we need to do something. We need to do something, especially here where flooding is always a threat. And if that's not enough to live with that, we have the rising cost of insurance that now trap people many times in their home where they have no choice. They can't sell and they can't afford the insurance. So it's a double-edged sword, and I think it's an issue that as a country we need to deal with. So this is very important that we're here today to talk about a lot of this. I'm honored to be the chairman of the subcommittee with jurisdiction over FEMA and its disaster response, recovery and mitigation activities. At our first hearing this Congress, we launched a public policy debate about the growing and human financial costs of disaster. The trends are startling. Disaster costs are rising significantly. In 2012 and 2013, FEMA spent almost $8 billion on flooding disasters alone. Tackling this issue is one of my biggest priorities in this Congress. I thought it would be important to share with you some of the resources available at the state, federal, and local level to help reduce disaster costs and losses and support your efforts to reduce the disaster risks here in Pennsylvania. There are real and practical steps communities and individuals can take to protect their homes and their families from floods and at the same time reduce their costs and insurance premiums. Communities can take practical steps to reduce their flood risk through programs like the Community Rating System, or CRS. CRS specifically is designed to engage communities in mitigating against flooding. Communities that participate in the CRS program can see their insurance premiums reduced anywhere from 5 to 45%, and at the same time actually reduce the risk from flooding, protecting their families and properties from devastation. In Pennsylvania, 25 communities participate in CRS, including the city of Harrisburg and the city of Wilkes-Barre. FEMA also has the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program and the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Program to help offset the costs of mitigation activities across the nation. I've worked very hard to support the continued funding for the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Program. The Pre-Disaster Mitigation Program can provide assistance for acquiring and relocating properties out of a floodplain, elevating structures in a floodplain, and flood-proofing buildings. There are resources available to our communities that I want to make sure you are aware of. And I want to explore what policy changes may further reduce disaster costs and losses. Today we will start with brief presentations from mitigation experts from FEMA, the state of Pennsylvania, CEDACOG of Dauphin County, and the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. After the presentation, I'd like to open it up to questions and then have an open dialogue, because I know there are questions and some challenges, particularly in our rural communities. At the end, we plan to leave everyone enough time to continue your conversations and grab the additional information that has been provided by the presenters. Again, I want to thank you all to the presenters and for all of you, the community leaders and decision makers, for being here. We will begin with presentations from FEMA to talk about the federal role in promoting mitigation policy and the programs and assistances that are available, including the community rating system. Bill Lesser, Jean Gruber, and Mary Radford, can you please give us a brief introduction and get us started on this conversation?
Yes. Does the microphone pick me up? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chairman Barletta. It's a pleasure to be here in the 11th District. It's a pleasure to hear of your concern in doing the best we can through the National Flood Insurance Program to improve resiliency for communities in this area, and also to assist with reducing the cost of flood insurance, which I've already had a few conversations today with folks about the importance that is to them. I'm here representing the Federal Insurance and Mitigation Administration of FEMA. I work with Roy Wright, our Deputy Associate Administrator for Insurance and Mitigation, and he asked me to attend this meeting to share information about CRS and to take back the comments raised and suggestions, so that it affords us a chance to work together to try and deliver CRS as best we can in the 11th District. CRS is growing nationally. We have about 1,400 communities in the CRS, in the community rating system, with about 50 joining each year. And also, very importantly, communities already in CRS choose to advance in CRS class. And that also is an important part of delivering the program. Communities that advance in CRS class get increased reductions in the cost of their flood insurance. CRS very much embodies the whole community approach to disaster resistance. It is an operation that involves many stakeholders in the community, building permit officials, emergency managers, public information experts. It's an approach that really takes full advantage of all of the wealth of skills and talent in the community in a very practical and tangible way. I'm reminded that this is National Preparedness Month, September is, and how fitting that this first week of September is the week to emphasize flood resiliency. Future weeks will emphasize wildfire and hurricane preparedness, as well as at the end of the month we have a National Preparathon Day, when folks are encouraged to focus on don't wait, communicate. That's the theme we have going for September 2015. Get a plan going, and in particularly communicate with family members and others about where you'll be should you lose communication. I'd like to give just a little bit of information about CRS from a sort of technical standpoint. The community rating system started within the NFIP in 1990. It is really built from the insurance industry standard related to fire protection. The insurance industry uses a fire rating program called the Public Protection Classification System that also has classes through which the cost of fire insurance is reduced. That's really where the NFIP's insurance rating through the community rating system came from. There's also another important rating program. The Building Code Enforcement Grading Schedule is a rating program that looks at the effectiveness of building codes in communities, and that also can translate to reduced cost for flood insurance. Essentially, CRS follows three key goals: reducing and avoiding flood damage to insurable property, supporting insurance aspects of the NFIP, and fostering what we call comprehensive floodplain management, which includes things like the preservation of open space and flood warning, that sort of thing. I think many here probably know or are a little familiar with the benefits of CRS. I'll run through those quickly, and then I think next we hear from Mari Radford from Region 3. Certainly one of the most well-recognized benefits of CRS is the reduced cost of the flood insurance premiums, but it's important for us to remind ourselves of the other benefits that are very practical, such as reduced flood damage potential, better flood warning, a greater attention to keeping floodplains in open space. These different activities are all reflected in the booklet we have. We have some over at the table and have more that outlines the different activities, and that's really where you get a detailed understanding of the program. Thank you very much for having FEMA here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Gene Gruber, the Mitigation Director for FEMA in Philadelphia. Great opening comments by the Congressman about what we're about. When people think of CRS, I always hear the community say, what are the benefits? And we always tend to talk about the reduction in flood insurance premiums, and that's to me that's a secondary benefit. What you said, Congressman, the reducing disaster losses, that is a tremendous challenge for us all, especially with challenges in budget that we all deal with in the country. So, is CRS for everyone? I would say to the communities here today, listen to what we have to say, ask questions, meet with us, whatever you want to do, learn about the situation, see what help you can get. I talked with Bill Siegel before about the help that CEDACOG can give to communities in possibly getting into CRS if that's what they're interested in. But I think you need to make the decision. Again, if you focus just on the side of flood insurance, that's one aspect of the program, but it's also reducing the disaster losses. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of giving the plaque to the mayor of Harrisburg, as the Congressman mentioned, one of our top CRS programs in Region 3. And it was really impressive to see what they were able to do. They had great coordination with other agencies such as the Weather Service and the Geological Survey. They knew they would get in advance where the peak was going to be in Harrisburg, and they knew, based upon that peak, the impacts that were going to happen in the community, and they were able to get the messages out to the residents about evacuation, about moving what could be moved. Even obviously, you can't move your house overnight, but if you can move furniture, you can do some things to protect your house, whether it's sandbagging, whatever things were. They had a very well coordinated system, and again, that's what we're looking for. But there is a lot of effort that needs to be put forth on the community on an ongoing basis. Again, our focus is reducing losses, protecting lives and property. So I ask everybody to listen to what we have to say, to ask questions, and then the determination is up to you to decide whether you're interested in pursuing this program or other programs, such as the Congressman mentioned, pre-disaster mitigation, the HMGP money that becomes available after a disaster. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and this is just one more of those tools that you can bring to the table. So I'll turn it over to Mari and let her talk about some of the details. Go ahead, Mari.
Thank you. Thank you, Gene. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mari Radford. I am the CRS coordinator for FEMA Region 3. And in that role, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the benefits of the program, how a community joins, and then how we can support you once you're in the program. There are many reasons why a Commonwealth community would consider joining CRS. Most are attracted by the flood insurance premium savings, which has been shown to be typically reinvested in the local community. But more importantly, CRS has been shown to reduce your risk of flooding through better program organization, the opportunity to compare your floodplain management program to state and national benchmarks, and to access technical assistance to make it better. There are also real incentives, both financial and to make your community safer, to keep innovating within the CRS program. Lastly, but probably most importantly, the community rating system is all about educating your public on why good floodplain management is important. And we all know that an informed public will help you build the constituency you need to run a program with fewer political hurdles. As a higher standards program, we have seen time and time again as CRS communities have engaged in purposeful steps that have helped to reduce the risk to the whole community while reducing flood insurance premiums for its residents. Our recent High Watermarks campaign in the city of Harrisburg will earn its CRS points for reminding the community that floods aren't just a line on a map. The city of Sunbury earns significant points for having adopted freeboard, which is an additional elevation requirement above the NFIP minimums. And they've also adopted the IBC and the IRC. Upper Augusta Borough got CRS credit for their channel debris removal program. This documents the inspection of public and private drainage systems and the removal of debris when it's needed. Actions like these have direct impact on reduced flood losses for both the homeowners and business owners in these communities. To join the CRS, you must first pass a community assistance visit. To better prepare you, we've developed a CRS ready checklist. You'll find it on the back table over there, which includes attending our Managing Floodplain Development through the National Flood Insurance Program course. We also have flyers back there on that one too. And that course will help ensure that you understand the minimum requirements of the NFIP. You will also be asked to verify your community has an approved and adopted hazard mitigation plan. Tom will speak about this. A compliant floodplain ordinance, and you've reviewed your community's repetitive loss list. It's also a good time to start collecting elevation certificates, if you don't already, and on new and substantially improved structures. Lastly, you will need to complete the CRS Quick Check to show that you have a minimum of 500 points in CRS creditable activities to join. Once you've completed these steps, you send us a letter of interest and we will schedule your CAF and to move forward. There are many ways that we support the CRS program. We offer in-person trainings and webinars. We help build CRS user groups that facilitate the sharing of ideas on what activities work and how to do them better. User groups also help participating communities guide non-participating communities in the application process. It's one community helping another, and they've been very, very successful because of that. I just heard, by the way, last week that Jersey Shore Borough is starting a user group out there, so our first one in Pennsylvania. We have a national CRS update newsletter which highlights program changes and enhancements and spotlights what communities are doing in their programs. I will hand it over to the state.
Good morning. Tom Hughes, the State Hazard Mitigation Officer with the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. First, I want to introduce my boss, Steve McConnich. He's the Bureau of Recovery and Mitigation Director. Under the Bureau of Recovery and Mitigation, we actually have the individual assistance, public assistance, and hazard mitigation. We've got a sheet over also on the table that talks about the individual assistance and public assistance. Also, not to confuse you, but there is also a hazard mitigation program under public assistance, where under mitigation we try to break the cycle. And so they also, through the infrastructure, there may be some projects that they might be able to assign public assistance dollars. Under what I deal with, though, are the Section 404 dollars, the hazard mitigation dollars. I see a lot of faces here. There's a lot of folks that I've been working on with hazard mitigation projects here. And one of those that I deal with are acquisitions, demolitions. If you've ever bought in a house under using FEMA dollars, though, it's triple that what's required. And I got to hand it to all the folks here in the room. I couldn't have done it. We couldn't have done it without you guys on doing that paperwork and working with FEMA through the process. We're 4 years out, and there are a couple more homes that we need to buy within the district, and we're working hard to do that. Also, what I get asked for are what resources are out there that I can grab at my fingertips to help me with be it homeowners, businesses, and that. And I've got the hazard mitigation trifold over there. It talks about the non-disaster programs and the disaster programs. Whereas I think the non-disaster programs are just as important as the disaster programs. In the blue sky days, as we're dealing with right now, there's some things that folks could be doing. One of the things that's required for both those disaster programs is a hazard mitigation plan. Maury had talked about the CRS program. By going through some of the checklist items there in the CRS program, you'll see that hazard mitigation planning, they'll get credit for that. There's a number of things that they're already doing that are already doing well that they could get points for. Also, I would like to reiterate that the post-flood checklist, we've learned that after the flooding, there was a number of things that needed to be done at the local level, and disasters happen at the local level, that they could be working through not only after a disaster, but also after any kind of flooding event. The floodplain administrator is a very important position, and I want to tell you too that the floodplain management and the National Flood Insurance Program does not fall under FEMA. I want to introduce Dan Fitzpatrick here. Dan is the National Flood Insurance Program coordinator here for the state. And between Dan and I, there's some things that need to be done on floodplain management side that enables me to use some of the federal dollars. And Dan's been great through this whole process. Also, there is an item that's out there that resource that's very important for homeowners. There's a homeowner's guide to retrofitting. In your boroughs, acquisition demolition may not be the answer. Next best thing you can do is elevations, and we've got a number of elevations that are going on throughout the state. And this book will actually tell them what they can and can't do with FEMA dollars. I want to give just the definition. Sometimes people just don't understand what mitigation does. Hazard mitigation, as FEMA defines, is any cost-effective action taken to eliminate or reduce the long-term risk to life and property from natural and technological hazards. So we've got to look at it from that standpoint, the natural and technological hazards. The three programs that we deal with through the state, and we're kind of a pass-through from FEMA, is the flood mitigation assistance, and those dollars come through the National Flood Insurance Program. We deal with the pre-disaster mitigation, which the Congressman had talked about. That's a congressional line item, and there's $29 million that was available this year. Our state did put in for pre-disaster mitigation and flood mitigation assistance, and then also at the disaster time, the hazard mitigation grant program. And we've spent $68 million federal, state, and local dollars on Irene and Lee. I was asked to just mention some success stories here. Just here in Sunbury, they went for a flood mitigation assistance grant. If you go out on 61, they actually do, on October 7th, they're going to exercise the use of the floodgates that were bought with flood mitigation assistance dollars. And I've been here and I've witnessed it, and they actually time it. And it's pretty official when the stop clock starts and when it stops. So what they do is they look at the city workers and also the first responders, and they actually, it's kind of a contest, and it's a really neat thing to watch. And that's what people should be doing. It should be exercising. Another one is up in the town of Bloomsburg, 900 block. If you drive through Bloomsburg on the way to the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds, those homes now are through Bill Lothar here and his folks there at the town. They're now out of harm's way. They also elevated the airport right next to the Susquehanna. We know about Con Air. Those stories, I'll get to it. We actually, through Silver Jackets, have a success stories. This just came up this week. PA Silver Jackets is a group between federal, state, local agencies, also associations like PA Floodplain Managers, Keystone Emergency Management Association, PSATS, Boroughs Association, that we talk through once a month on issues that we think that FEMA's not the only show in town. There are other agencies, other people here even at the table that have other dollars that are available, that we look at mitigation totally, whole community, that is, if I can't do it under FEMA dollars, we look at how else can we do it. We look at cost share. How can, that's a big thing. If communities can't afford cost share, we don't have a project. So we try to work through those issues. One of the Shikshini Borough, Nanticoke, Danville Borough, we're talking a number of communities here within the district have used mitigation dollars, not only just FEMA dollars, but other dollars for mitigation actions. Lastly, what I want to talk about is free training. I know Eric Staley, you're here. You went through the L273 course. The Emergency Management Institute is a great source to have folks, send folks to the class. This guy's book with him. and I didn't stage that. So there are trainings, that independent study that you can go through FEMA. There are also, like as Maury had talked about, free training of 4-hour blocks for floodplain managers. There's a lot of training out there. Please talk to us if there's something that you guys need. We'll try to find it for you. And that's pretty much what I want to talk about before we go to the booth.
Folks, I just have some brief comments. Again, my name is Steve Bukonich. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Recovery and Mitigation. As Tom stated, I too see a lot of familiar faces in the room, in the audience of folks that I have worked with for numerous years. I came to the state from Luzerne County. I was the Emergency Management Coordinator there for too many years to mention. I left there for 25 years. So I've worked with a lot of the individuals in Luzerne County. I worked side by side with the congressman during Lee and Irene and those disaster impacts. So I understand what the local officials are dealing with and some of the impacts, but I just want to echo that if you have any questions or concerns, or you're not sure on how to deal with a program or whether or not you would qualify for a program, that's why we're here. We're here to help you. We're here to help guide you through the process. If you have any questions or concerns, give us a call and we'll point you in the right direction. If we're not able to help you, we can find the individuals that may be able to get you the funding that you need. So if you have any questions, concerns, not sure about something, give us a call. Myself or my staff will be able to help you get pointed in the right direction. My business cards will be in the back. Some of the folks that know me for a long time know that I take this to heart, and I want to make sure that people are protected and the impacts to a disaster are minimized as much as possible. Thank you.
And again, we can't control a weather event. We have no control over a weather event. And that's why we're really zeroing in on what we can do to reduce the cost. And what I found is that in many times with the disaster, all the focus, especially down in Washington, is after the disaster, getting dollars to try to rebuild communities and help people. And it just makes sense that if there are things that we can do pre-disaster, it's tax dollars better spent up front to reduce the cost. And there are many things that we can do that you're going to learn today that many communities might not know, whether it's just people and citizens or community leaders. There are tools that I believe that we can use to save taxpayer dollars, but also prevent loss. And that's really what I want to zero in on, even as a nation, as we look at disaster after disaster, the tax dollars that are being spent after the disaster. I just think we're treating this in the wrong way, rather than looking up front. The CRS program that we're talking about, you can save up to 45% on your premiums. Now that's significant money, from 5 to 45%. Many communities aren't aware or aren't taking part in it. So, hopefully today, everyone, we're going to walk away with a plan, a different type of plan of how we move forward here, where we live with rivers and streams. Let's face it, Pennsylvania, I believe, has more flowing water than any of the lower 48 states in the country. So we all know too well, a little creek or a little stream can become a raging river during a flood event. And so it's not just people living near the river, it's just our creeks, and so it's very important. So we know that disasters don't obey city limits or borders, and the most appropriate way to approach mitigation is with a regional mitigation strategy. CEDACOG is leading the way with a regional approach for mitigation. Bill Siegel, can you please share with our attendees some of the exciting work that you're doing?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. As the Congressman said, CEDACOG has been working with the 7 local development districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We are a local development district, and for those of you who don't know, local development districts evolved out of the Appalachian Region Commission, which was formed in the 60s by John F. Kennedy. that time. The role of local development districts is to build capacity within the rural regions of the Appalachian Mountains. The ARC serves 13 states statewide or nationwide. The role that CEDACOG plays, and what I get to speak to today, is really I represent the 7 local development districts, all of whom historically have had a key role in local flood response, flood mitigation, the CRS programs. Many have had staffs historically that assisted communities with CRS. What we're moving toward today is a recognition that we need to help our communities respond to the impact of flood insurance reform. As we recognize that the nation can ill afford the kinds of subsidizing flood insurance that has historically occurred, the increasing costs of losses when events occur, as the Congressman referred to, we recognize that we need to find a way to respond to the impacts as the nation adjusts its flood insurance recovery plans. And so we have undertaken a number of steps to implement currently a program. We're using ARC funding. We've also asked for a commitment of funds from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which we are very optimistic we will receive. However, as you all know, the budget's sort of on hold at the moment. But the reality is that we are engaging, we're preparing to engage in communities to carefully assist them in undertaking self-evaluation, self-assessment, tying that in with the CRS program, and then moving beyond CRS into actually defining mitigation. And what we've recognized and what we're responding to is the fact that when we look at our communities, most of the communities throughout Pennsylvania, certainly throughout the LDD districts, throughout the CEDACOG area, are river development communities. They were built along the rivers 100, 150 years ago. Some of our communities have 50% of their homes in the floodplain. Many of those homes are the blue-collar workers, the lower-income families. Properties have been repetitively flooded, many of them, and so they're lower-value properties. What our concern is that as flood insurance premiums escalate, a number of things are going to happen within our communities. Flood insurance, for those that have mortgages and have flood insurance, as the rates increase, they will be more difficult to pay. Properties will become less saleable or reduced value as a result of the increased premium. And in worst case scenarios, people will not be able to keep up with mortgages, maintenance, and premiums, and properties become abandoned. For those properties that don't have or require flood insurance, as the insurance becomes less and less affordable, they'll make a decision that it's worth the risk to drop the insurance. Flood events, as we know, are predictable, but the only disaster that is predictable occurs again in the same place. We know it will happen, and so over time those homes become repetitively flooded and ultimately result in abandonment. What our municipalities are faced with over a period of time is a loss of tax base, the responsibility to maintain public infrastructure that's serving a smaller percentage of the homes, reduced value, blighting as homes are abandoned. One of the wake-up calls that we had at CEDACOG recently was learning of 2 municipalities in our region who actually had access to another funding source, community block grant funding, disaster recovery funds, who voted not to apply for those funds because they couldn't afford to lose the tax base if they did the buy-ins. That's a wake-up call. If we have communities who are turning down ways to reduce the losses that the federal government has to recover from, to reduce the impact to families because of the loss of tax base, we need to find creative ways to address that. So our response is to try to facilitate and assist communities at the local level. We have a unique ability as local development districts to engage in the communities, to partner with the counties, to partner with the municipalities, many of whom are virtual volunteer communities who have to respond to the issues that they're confronted with on a day-in, day-out basis. And while flood may be the most important, during and shortly after an event, over time the focus begins to dissipate. So our idea, our goal over the next 12 to 18 months is to aggressively, working through the LDDs, work with communities to identify the at-risk properties, look at the value of those properties, look at the tax revenue, identify insured and uninsured properties, determine existing private investment for flood insurance, what the premiums are, what the deductibles are, and bring together information, much of which exists in various places, but not comprehensively, and then to inventory and value public infrastructure. This analysis then gives us the tools to educate through that process the municipal staff, the elected officials, and the citizens. One of the goals that the local development districts are focused on is to change the paradigm of recovery to a paradigm of preparedness. And that might involve relocation, and even so far as looking at expanding the municipal boundaries of communities through negotiation in order to protect tax base. So the goal and the outcome is really a response to the things that we've been seeing at CEDACOG and the other LDDs have been seeing. The intention then is to work directly with the communities to implement the plan, working with the plans that may exist, updating those plans, and addressing the tax base, addressing property use, looking at property that might be developable for housing that's outside of the floodplain, and then ultimately work and conduct grantsmanship and work to develop the funding plan to bring together the quilt or the patchwork, if you will, of the multiple funding sources that are out there that many of our communities don't have the capacity to pursue. So it's a development process. The LDDs have kicked off. We've been very fortunate to work very closely with the staff of the Congressman's office and the Congressman himself to investigate the funding streams and opportunities, and we look forward over the next 12 months, 18 months, in actively engaging in taking many of these various pieces and assisting communities in actually implementing them in their towns.
Thank you, Bill. Perhaps the biggest challenge does lie for all of us at the local level. As you know, I was a mayor, so I completely appreciate what it's like to hear from your constituents every day at the grocery store and the post office and even at church. So Dave Sanko, who's here today from the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, understands that too, but also has experience at the state level. Dave, can you tell us what resources are available to the locals and what recommendations you would have for those here in attendance today?
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thank you for holding this information hearing, and we look forward to participating. As has been said, all disasters are local. We represent second-class townships around Pennsylvania that covers 95% of the landmass. We're involved with a lot of education and training opportunities, and certainly work with Dan on the floodplain management courses. And there's more opportunities to do that moving forward. But as you said, Pennsylvania is the most flood-prone state in the country. I'm encouraged that the current thinking allows for a menu of options for flood mitigation. We went through in Pennsylvania over the course of the last several decades, a period of time where where buyouts cost too much, and buyouts are off the list. We're not going to do that. And then we went through a period of time we're only going to do buyouts, and we're going to throw people out of their houses, and back to them. So this balanced menu of different choices, I think, makes a lot of sense, and gives, at the end of the day, gives communities and local governments and residents choices and options. And I think options outweigh mandates any day of the week. As we talk about those mitigation projects, we need to recognize that the upstream mitigation projects may cause downstream additional downstream flooding problems. So what we fix in one community may cause issues in another. But as you said, Pennsylvania was also communities were born in Pennsylvania on rivers because of commerce. And that's where they developed, and that's where they are. And these plans can't help but improve in the way that the spiraling costs of flood insurance may impact to that with the light concerns. As people leave, tax bases go away, and the community spirals down and goes away as a result, largely of kind of federal mandates and a bunch of rules. And nobody's against rules, but I think you need to take a look at how egregious some of those become. I understand the importance of, and our residents understand the importance of the flood insurance reform, and And in more recent years, as we see those costs starting to spike, appreciate Congress has said this program's got to pay for itself, but it strikes me as a little odd. It's the one program that helps helps people in need is perhaps maybe one of the very few programs in Congress or in Washington that has to pay for itself. And I understand that people who don't live in floodplains don't think they ought to have to subsidize the cost of those who do live in floodplains, but I also understand that there are community interests to be had, and all of us chip in and pay for food and housing and health care for murderers and folks who have chosen to commit crimes and are living in federal prison. But because it's part of what we do for a community. I wonder whether that model should be adjusted. The old, when it was more subsidized, it was mandated. It's not going to be subsidized. Maybe the mandate relaxes. Maybe it can become a little more optional. CRS is a great, sounds like a great program. It sounds really easy and really easy to get in and really easy to do. But it's almost 25 years old, and we have less than 1% of Pennsylvania's communities and less than 2% of the nation's communities participating. So I think we need to ask ourselves why that is, and what's not so easy about it. And is the juice just not worth the squeeze, as my grandmother used to say. We're certainly happy to partner and try to figure out what that is and move forward and try and educate communities to get involved. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure these communities survive, and we have options, not mandates, and maybe refocusing on. And this is not I'm not here to bash FEMA or Homeland Security or even Washington, but it's really need to be focusing on helping citizens and helping communities, and not helping bureaucracies and helping build bureaucracies. And CRS has a rule book like this to go through before you can start. Maybe that can be shrunk a little bit. Our takeaway is hopefully the same as yours: sharing information, getting more residents and local elected officials informed, getting the information they need so that they can have opportunities to save lives and protect property.
Thank you, Dave. I know some communities are concerned about the resources and investments required to take advantage of some of these programs. But you have some amazing resources right here in your neighboring communities. Dauphin County is a CRS success story that almost wasn't. Mike Musser, can you and John Mitzurek please discuss with us the work that you have done in Dauphin County on mitigation, particularly the CRS program?
Sure. Thank you, Congressman. Dauphin County, thanks to the leadership of Commissioner Hayes, Priest, and Hardwick, looked at the CRS program and were provided with a unique opportunity through the CDBG DR funds that were available. They took some of the funds, instead of always being so reactionary to disasters, they decided to be a lot more proactive, a lot more resilient in their planning, and decided to put in place, or try to put in place, a countywide CRS program. And they funded with those funds. So I think one of the issues that comes up is it's a good program, and if it can be duplicated and led countywide, I think it helps the municipalities. But if there was some funding in place to help the municipalities, just with the preparation to get ready for the calves and know what they have to do, the applications, and everything, I think would be very helpful to the municipalities, especially if they're working together as a group instead of just individual groups. Some of the very important things that have been mentioned, I don't want to harp on a lot of them. It was very important for us to do the community outreach into the communities. We invited all 40 municipalities in Dauphin County together. We got great participation. We actually had, I believe 100% participation. Everybody attended the meeting. And out of that, we had 22 communities, do the baseline assessment. And what we did with that, working with Tetra Tech, was we came in, went to the 22 communities, broke them up, went out individually, sat with the borough managers, the elected officials, and we did a baseline assessment for them. Went through the questionnaire, different things, went over what would be needed, were they ready, weren't they ready, different things that they could expect if they were going to enter the program by having the CAV done and by submitting the application. Because once you go down so far down that road, there are a lot of requirements that a municipality, if they're not properly prepared for, could could run into once they enter the program. And I think the very important thing is to get the proper outreach education there and make sure they're ready to do that. They may not be ready that day, but 2 years from now, we can prepare them to be ready to enter that. As you said, being the mayor of Hazleton, I was the borough manager of Skilton for over 15 years, and I understand, I live along the Susquehanna, you know, the importance and to prepare for this. But I think a countywide plan helps everybody be better prepared. It gets led from the top down, and it helps work with the communities so that we're not so reactionary to that. But I'll let John Mizrak go into a little bit more of the baseline assessments and the impact and the analysis reports we did for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Congressman, for having this meeting today. It is very important, as Mr. Musser mentioned, Dauphin County, coming out of Tropical Storm Lee and Hurricane Irene, were recipients of Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding, and they have had a history of flooding there. As everybody has talked about, it's a very predictable disaster. We know where they're going to flood in the county, and the county was devastated by flooding. And the commissioners, under their leadership, and have had many examples of this over the years, decided that they really wanted to play a role in helping to be a capacity builder, be a facilitator for the communities, the 40 municipalities in their county. And so they created this regional approach to doing CRS. CRS has been discussed by Mari and is a locally owned program. It's a locally driven program. The communities themselves are the ones that are the entities that end up moving forward with this. But in Dauphin County, the commissioners understood where they could potentially play a role in being able to help them. And they saw it as an outshoot of a multi-pronged approach. You've also heard, and you mentioned in your opening remarks, Congressman, about having a more comprehensive approach to mitigation and for dealing with disasters. Dauphin County was currently undertaking their hazard mitigation plan update with FEMA, through funding with FEMA and Tom's office. So it was a unique opportunity for all 40 municipalities to be thinking about hazard mitigation. Mari came and FEMA was very helpful during some of the outreach meetings with the municipalities during that process to be able to educate them on the CRS program and talk to them a little bit about it. At the same time, we were working with them individually down back in their municipal offices on taking a look at the program. They're also working on some aggressive mitigation strategies through buyout, through open space preservation, some of those other activities, which are part of a comprehensive mitigation process. But the unique part about this is there are also tools and there are also programs that can generate credits underneath the Community Rating Systems program. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, and as Mari mentioned, the program can give anywhere from 5% to a 45% discount to flood insurance agreements. And as you know, with the passage of Bigger Waters in 2012, and then the passage of the Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act of 2014, there is an impact to some of the flood insurance premium payers in these communities. And Dauphin County saw it, much like Bill mentioned, Dauphin County saw it as a real serious issue that their municipal governments, their school districts, and their county offices themselves realized that with that long-term potential long-term impacts of those increased rates, that could actually end up negatively impacting the communities. You could start to see disinvestment in places that have really made Pennsylvania's communities so special, that have really generated economic development, generated places where people want to live, generated recreational opportunities for those communities, and generated the tax base that they use on a day-to-day basis, much as you did when you were mayor, Congressman. It's very important, and the county really saw this as an opportunity to take a look at a comprehensive approach, to be able to not only think about mitigation and be able to move people out of harm's way, but also look at opportunities where they could provide direct savings, direct impact to the residents. It's a very unique, Community Rating Systems program is a very unique program. Going through that program and getting into the program really provides money right back into each and every citizen's pocket that is able to take on that discount, which I think is a unique program that's out there. It can really put it back in. It can put that money back into the residents' pockets. They can use it for maintenance on their properties. They can use it to buy goods and services in their communities, helping to build the economic base. They can use it for recreational opportunities. They can use it for a whole list of things that can help that community begin to thrive. And I think that's what really makes it unique program. As Mike mentioned, and as you heard today, one of the first things that needed to be done in Dauphin County was to really reach out to the communities. The educational components, not only to understand what the rules and regulations are of the community rating system, but to understand once you get in the program, what it means and what your responsibilities are. And Dauphin County Commissioners started that off by working with all 40 municipalities, doing some conferences with them. Then we sat down and we worked on a baseline assessment. Maury mentioned the checklist that FEMA has available under the Community Rating Systems Program. What the county has done is provide technical assistance, technical capacity to those municipalities to, in essence, evaluate or do a baseline assessment of their communities, their National Flood Insurance Program, and their floodplain management programs, to determine, get a handle on whether or not they're good, they're at the right time to be able to enter into the program. Mike mentioned that at that point in time, that tool can be used to help them understand whether they may be a good fit for them right now, but it also gives them an idea of what they might need to do in the future to be able to get into the program. And part of what Dauphin County's commissioners are going to be doing is once we go through that and we just wrap that up with all 22 municipal governments that were interested, is provide them with an analysis report that gives them an idea of where they stand in regards to the program, and what some things maybe that they need to look at to be able to improve. So it helps them really build capacity at the local level. Once we go through that, the municipal governments, again, it's their decision as to whether they want to enter the program. The county is offering to any of them that are interested in helping them work through their application to get into the CRS program, and also work with FEMA and the communities as they move through that process. We've had, Dauphin County's had great partnerships. As I mentioned, Maury and FEMA have been there to educate the communities and help assist with that, and also, I believe, with the training program, the minimum training program, to offer that to the communities that are there. We've also had a good partnership with Dan Fitzpatrick and the state FIP coordinator. One of the major requirements is to have a community action visit, so we've been working with him and with Maury to make sure that once the commissioners are done with this process, and the communities that are interested, we'll be able to work with them and hopefully move through that process expeditiously so that we can get them into the program if they're interested. This program, at the end of the day, the commissioners, and what we believe are going to be very helpful to the communities, is it's going to help educate the municipal officials on sound floodplain management efforts. It's going to help to educate the citizens so that they understand what their community officials are doing for them. It's going to help to protect those vulnerable areas, and help to protect some vulnerable populations that are receiving the subsidies to be able to for the floodplain insurance. At the end of the day, it's about building stronger, more resilient communities, and the CRS program is a big part of what Dauphin County is looking at to be able to build a more resilient community, along with some of the other things that we mentioned. So they're excited. We're very close to finishing up the first phase of this program, and then moving into the more or less the implementation phase of this.
Thank you. I want to remind the participants, it's a free-flowing event here, so anything anyone said, you can have something else to add to it, or a question, please speak up. I think it'll be better for everyone to come, if we have that, and people can just jump in when they want to. But I just want to have a question. Why do you think more communities aren't taking advantage of the CRS? They made a good point. It's a great program. What do you think is preventing more communities from taking advantage of it, in your experience?
No, I think some of it is the infrastructure and the cost of things that have to be put in place, to correct some of the things. And I think you brought up an important point early on, Congressman, that if the education is important to understand that if we spend the dollars now, and that's going to help prevent the cleanup and all the other things that come with a disaster later on. So if we spend those dollars up front, then it frees up dollars down in the future for more of the economic impact for the different projects or different developers that may come in, and the different needs that every community needs to broaden the tax base. But I think personally it's just really the education of trying to spend the dollars up front, and also to provide some assistance to the municipalities. It doesn't have to be a whole funding grant program, but if it could help them with the planning aspect, the engineering, or the design of different things that could be put in place to help prevent these disasters so they can put that money up front. I think that's a big help because it's really hard to, as you know, to convince some of the taxpayers when you're spending money in those areas what the long-term effect is. So I think that sometimes plays into it, in my opinion.
So you believe the squeeze is worth the juice?
I do at the end of the day. At the end of the day it is, but you still got to be able to, educate the community about it.
Let me throw out the first question for the floor, and just to piggyback on that. Studies have shown that for every dollar that we invest in mitigation, the taxpayer saves $3 to $4 in disaster assistance. So I'd like to throw the question to all of our presenters here. Have you found that to be true, that mitigation measures are a good return on the investment and a good use of taxpayer dollars? And anyone can jump. Start it off.
Yes, thank you, Mark. A couple thoughts come to mind regarding the benefits of mitigation. With the community rating system, of course, it's been around since 1990, and many communities that have joined have not been through severe flooding since they've joined. However, there's a few notable examples where significant flooding occurred and the community's leaders felt they were much better off. Sea Isle City, New Jersey is a community that's been in CRS for many years. The mayor there is a strong supporter of CRS, and also the new construction higher standards that have been in place in that community. And when Sandy struck Sea Isle City, the mayor there was very proud to say we were back in business in 2 days. I have a video clip of him speaking to that point. And so there's one example that feels that these mitigation practices that get tested when a severe event arrives do make a difference. Homeowners are back in their homes, children are going to school, businesses are opening, and life goes on. Another good example relates to the severe flooding in Colorado in September 2013. There are several very advanced CRS communities there, Fort Collins, Colorado, Boulder, City of Boulder. Tragically, these communities have suffered severe flooding in their history many decades ago. So these were communities in Colorado that, from their experience of severe flooding, came to believe there's a better future for us. What can we do? And so they implemented some higher standards. They did some buyouts. They have a very aggressive public education program. So when those flooding events in 2013 came, definitively there were fewer damage. And one notable example that I remember is the flood warning program credit that we have in CRS. They used, and the gentleman that I heard present on this said it worked like a charm. The 4-component part of the flood warning system, which is Activity 1610, got information out to those that needed it, had assignments to city staff that had roles in evacuation. So not only are we talking about flood damage reduction as it may relate to insurable property, but there's a tremendous public safety, property owner protection element also. So those two examples, the flooding in Colorado in 13 and Sandy, have some good CRS examples.
Within the state, one that comes to mind is DR 1898. We actually received snow disaster funds. We did some acquisitions there in Huntington County. We had it was a pretty hard winter. We had ice jams on some of the rivers there in Huntington County and Petersburg Borough, where we had done the acquisitions. There were homes that we had removed that I remember getting an email from the state EOC saying thank you. Not only did we not have to worry about the residents, but we also didn't have to worry about the first responders going in there as they normally had in that area.
I think mitigation dollars very clearly help save money at the end of the day. But one of the things that sometimes discourages local communities from getting open, it's very difficult to sit and explain to local taxpayers. Sometimes the cost of compliance, and that may be one of the reasons why people don't do CRS. The cost of compliance and the cost of joining the program, just some of you got to hire an extra lawyer and an extra accountant, and in some cases the local match to accept federal grants will exceed what it would have cost to do the project if you done it on your own without federal assistance. So guidelines and bureaucratic hurdles that have to be met, the costs actually are increased. And maybe it would do more overall if we can move some of those guidelines, both for local communities and spread what are limited federal dollars into more communities.
I think there's also, any one of us around this room and around this table and around this room can probably point to successes where we've had savings as a result of the investments we've made. But I think a point that was made by Mike, who just stepped out of the room earlier, is worth repeating, and that is the capacity of the small municipalities. You know, the Commonwealth is made up of many, many small municipalities. The capacity of the staff within those municipalities to undertake the kind of projects we're talking about, the funding to actually do that, the leadership to do that, the public education necessary. I would ask John the amount of effort you put into educating the public, bringing people together. It's a tremendous amount of work. And most of our municipalities just don't have the capacity to do that independently.
I would agree. I know that the commitment that the Dauphin County Commissioners were interested in right away was is how could they play that role or fill that gap, Congressman, of providing information, providing the technical support that's needed to be able to understand what the rules and regulations are and understand what it means to get into the program or what it means to take on some mitigation type project. It's a natural fit at the regional level. When you look at the hazard mitigation planning process in Pennsylvania, the counties and around the country, but at the county level, there's a natural regional approach to looking at that. The municipal governments do have their own rules and responsibilities that they have to play in there, but the counties and/or regions can play a capacity building role and come to the table to be able to help that. The other interesting opportunity that's been had too is by doing a regional approach, we were also able to take a look at some of the regional efforts that are underway that are also creditworthy under the CRS program. Mr. Lesser just mentioned the flood warning system in Colorado. There's opportunities that we've been able to look at that where some of the communities, if they were engaging it on their own, may not even realize that they're available to them if you get them, to that level to be able to hit and enter into the program. So again, just capacity and provide that capacity to the communities is important.
Congressman, just some of the folks that are in the room will agree with me, floods along the Susquehanna in 2004, 2005, 2006, and then again in 2011, getting those individuals out of harm's way have those adverse effects and impacts on the tax base in communities, but the money spent on getting those individuals acquired and out of the floodplain does have significant impact because you're not now spending additional dollars to repair and replace their homes and their contents and things of that nature. So I do see significant cost savings on using hazard mitigation dollars. But also, going back to the CRS program, there are also some things that communities may not be aware of. Doing simple programs such as the National Weather Service Storm Ready program, either on the county level or on the municipal level, which is basically doing an application and showing that you have simple things in place, a flood warning or a public warning system where individuals have the knowledge of where to go for information, can gain that valuable CRS points through their application process. So even doing similar or small things such as those can help people get into the CRS program and maybe get them one step higher in the grading system. And then going back to what Mr. Miserak said, trying to find that champion within the county or in a regional area of pushing that program forward for a group and then providing that funding source or finding a funding source to do that may be the best way to go, because a lot of the smaller municipalities, such as in Luzerne County and some of the other counties, are 1 or 2 day a week service providers. So they just don't have the capacity to do it, nor do they have the funding that's available. So finding that champion may be a way of getting this accomplished in a more expeditious manner.
I'd like to jump in if that's okay. As the person who comes out and does the community assistance visit, with many of you, I don't think the threshold to getting into CRS is that hard in terms of the points. So getting that 500-point minimum really is not much of a stretch for most of our communities here. If you've adopted a floodplain ordinance with 18 inches of freeboard, you have 150 points right there. You only need 500 to join. Those other 350 are easy to pick up, and all the other things you do. When you pick up the phone and you talk to a resident about whether they're in or out of the special flood hazard area, you get points for that. So the threshold is not so hard right there. What is hard is for these smaller communities with limited capacity to have trained staff who understand what the National Flood Insurance Program minimum requirements are. And it's a huge lift. It's a huge lift. If you have very few properties in the special flood hazard area, you don't issue permits on a regular basis, you may just not understand, what it is we require. So when I come in and do that community assistance visit, I get a lot of deer in the headlights looks. Not because they were doing something wrong consciously, but because they just didn't know. Some of the solutions there are memorandums of agreement with other communities that have a higher capacity. That's something that we are starting to talk more about. Trainings. You tell me where I have 30 people who need to learn everything about the NFIP, and we'll find a way to bring a training there. Otherwise, we do teach at Emmitsburg, the Emergency Management Institute, multiple times a year. And we do trainings here in Pennsylvania, one coming up in Malvern, as I mentioned, multiple times. So, we're trying to figure out how we can help bridge that gap with them, but that's probably the hardest piece.
Brent, I know you have a question, so I'm going to open up the floor for any questions from our attendees. And I just ask that you give your name and the community that you represent. Okay.
If I use this properly. My name is Brent Boyer. I'm a councilman from Millersburg Borough, which is on the river. I don't really know anything about CRS, but I'd certainly like to learn. But I think I'll follow with what Bill said. If it requires our own money to join, that's probably the biggest problem for us because we don't have any of our own money. Our budget for the year is around $800,000. About 40% of that goes to our police, and the rest keeps the streets plowed. So we really don't have our own funding or the ability to generate our own funding because we're a community of about 2,500 people. Our tax base is too small to generate the funds to do these kinds of projects for preventative work. We've been working with the county a lot, who I guess some of the money, the gentleman from Dauphin County can help me with this. They're helping us with around $1 million project at the Kathy's Critters where you visited, Congressman, to remediate that problem. And I believe that funding came from FEMA, from one of the last disasters administered by the county. And they're helping us complete a large project there to stop that. But I was working with the county to get more dollars to, every year along our riverfront, we have a large park system along the riverfront and a lot of homes. Every time it floods that whole area, and it costs us about $200,000 in damage. So we performed a study to give us the cost, the means, how to prevent that. We took it to the county. They were very gracious to help us apply for the federal dollars. I was told, and forgive me, I don't know the programs very well. But FEMA basically had $1 billion that was put out that was being administered through HUD, and then is being administered, therefore, by Dauphin County Economic Development. So we took our study, we wanted to apply for that to mitigate some of the damage we had from the last storm, but also to do preventative measures so this wouldn't happen every other time. Well, what we were told was that the need for that was about $1.5 million. We were told that our project wasn't very attractive because it was too small. If it was larger dollars, it would help us in the rankings and so on. So we're down at the county and we're sitting around trying to dream up how we can spend more money. Because if we ask for $5 million instead of $1.5 million, we're more attractive and we have a better chance of getting the money. So we're coming up, well, some water comes down from there and up from here, and we can do this and we can do that. And I guess, Congressman, do you feel in Washington you can do something to maybe make it more sensible, help the smaller guy better? Because if you give me $5 million, I'm still only going to save you $200,000 every year. I only need $1 million, you know. But again, they don't want to give us that because it's too little. So, you know, we try to do preventative things, but in our case, we're told we're too small. And things, one of our big preventative things we want to do, and if there's money out there for it, we may not be aware of it, but our stormwater system, of course, you know, it rains on our streets, it goes into the pipes fill up and runs back on our streets. I was talking to the mayor of Lancaster, who has a much larger tax base, and they were able to take their stormwater system, they ran it to drain fields underneath their baseball fields. So it doesn't overpower their storm system, doesn't flood their streams and so on. We would like to do that, things like that in our town, where we don't have, you know, the funds to do those things.
Frank, let me first tell you that common sense in Washington is not so common. Unfortunately. And I hear what you're saying, you know, you're going to spend more money when you don't have to, especially when it's so hard, and that money could be spent somewhere else. So, you know, there were a couple of things in what you said that I'm sure some of the panel here would like to comment on, or have recommendations and suggestions. I hope.
Brian, I can just briefly touch on the project. I wouldn't count any of the projects in that application that Dauphin County is submitting in. The $1 billion you speak of is the CDBG, I refer to it as the third round of funding, but it's the NDRC funds. That's $1 billion that's put out there. That application isn't due till October 27th. And to get you an idea of what you're dealing with is you have HUD, a regulatory agency, if you will, and then you have the Rockefeller Center teaming up, who is a think tank. So when they come up with what you and I might just think corrects the problem and gets it done in the future, they really want to see a very innovative approach, and it's coming more driven from the Rockefeller side. So when Dauphin County's putting in, believe me, we had, I think it was, John can correct me, over $235 million of projects that still could be done after the first 2 rounds of funding. And as we were starting to put them together, they wanted everything tied in together, and Tom can tell you from the state, it's a strange process that is ever evolving. You know, there was one round to get in, we did do that, now we're in the second phase. And then the third phase, if we get funded, and every phase it changes a little bit more. And John is actually, with his team, is putting a lot more of the meat of the application together. But so I wouldn't say that yet, but I think the congressman is right. It's not just, hey, you and I know that corrects the problem. That's not how they're looking at it. So to get Dauphin County to even get funded, we really have to push to think out of the box, or we may come away from the table with 0, which is not really the way we want it, but we want to come away from the table with money brought back to Dauphin County.
I would just add, I think you speak to a specific problem that we have in Pennsylvania, given the number of municipalities we have, the small municipalities. And I think the county's Dauphin's an example in our region, Lycoming is a good example, where they're stepping up to the plate and facilitating that. In some of the smaller counties, the local development districts can provide that same kind of service. So I think that's critically important as we pursue the funding streams, is to recognize that by approaching these at a county level or regional level, it enhances the opportunities.
There's a question in the back.
My name is Tom O'Brien. I'm with the Sunbury Municipal Authority. Our flood system was built in the 50s. At the time, the city executed a contract with the Corps of Engineers saying that they would be responsible for maintenance. The state also had a contract with the Corps saying they as well would be responsible for maintenance. Apparently, the state has forgotten about that contract, and they said the city is responsible for the maintenance. Well, the city couldn't afford it, turned it over to the municipal authority. Under our original contract with the Corps estimated it would cost a little over $12,000 a year for maintenance and operations. We're currently spending close to $500,000. The state takes the position that it's our responsibility. We have no losses in the recent floods, but the governmental agencies, both at the federal and the state level, has, rather than recognizing that as a benefit, they're still insisting that, it's our maintenance obligation. We have a system that's approaching 70 years old. Maintenance is going to continue to increase. We do get help from the Corps with major improvements, but the O&M cost is just continuing to rise with the age of the system, with no funding. So, what I would suggest that if the federal and state can recognize that they're not incurring losses here because of the system's well maintained, that they start contributing on an annual basis to assist us as this system grows older and requires more O&M. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be happy to set up conversations with them for you. Facilitate that. We'll bring the quarter and we'll work with you on that.
Hi, Dan Noor with the Borough of Danville. First, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. We are a CRS community in Danville. We're Class A, we get a 10% discount. And just a little bit of feedback. We've really had a good experience, a positive experience with CRS. It does, I won't lie, it takes time. We have a small administration, and it can be difficult when you have recycling and sewer and water and streets and everything else pulling you away. But if you just try to keep on it a little bit at a time, it can be a good thing. I think the biggest barrier for new communities is probably psychological. The coordinator's manual was War and Peace on steroids. But if you just piece it out, it can be a good thing, and for us it's been a benefit. My question though is CRS is good, but a 10% discount on rates that are increasing by potentially more than 10%, doesn't quite get you there. And in our experience in Danville, we have an extensive levee system. We've been able to lift entire communities out of the special flood hazard area by having that. But there are challenges with the 2011 flood numbers being added to FEMA's maps. We're expecting that our base flood elevation is going to increase, and we're going to have a part of our levee system that, if we don't raise it, won't be able to be recertified. So we are going to have some major project to undertake just to be able to keep our neighborhoods out of having to be mandated by insurance. So my question is, I haven't heard a lot today on large infrastructure projects like levee systems, where they fit into the strategy as a priority, if they are a priority, what kind of funds going forward do you envision being available for communities that want to embark on those?
One of the things, again, it was through many years of hard work, but creative solutions like Bloomsburg, which is under construction right now. I think it's one example that we need to point to. And again, I think that's the entire community and community leaders coming together and developing a plan and beginning that. And I think that was a creative solution to many years of trying to get an entire flood protection from Bloomsburg, but doing it at a pace that eventually will hopefully be added on to protect the entire community. But, you know, I thought that was a creative solution to getting around the problem of a flood wall to protect the entire community. If they want to talk about it.
Yeah, I would jump in and just say, I think the challenge as we look at major infrastructure projects is to bring together, cobble together the various sources of funding. Again, I think one of the things that's significant in Bloomsburg's project is the role that Columbia County played in that, in stepping up to the plate to make the Condier project happen, bringing state funding in to make that evolve. On the current project with the Audenham and Windsor properties, again, led by the county, the Congressman's role in assisting with the Economic Development Administration funding because it was so key for job retention with those manufacturing jobs. The work at the state level and to bring in the PAH2O funding. And then also the commitment from the private side on that project. 10% of the funds in that project came in from the private side. So I think we do have to be creative in how we make those projects work. They are critical. Dan, I think you made a very good point. As we have the new elevations of the updated maps, they're going to, frankly, negate some of the benefits we have as those change, and we're going to have to speak to that. It was one of the challenges with the Bloomsburg project. With best available data, we had to take a guess at elevations in order to be able to set elevation for that project. But I do think that it's a perfect example of how, with the right collective effort between the town, the county, and the industries working through Congressman's office, working with the state legislators, we were able to leverage the funds as a team.
Just a couple quick comments overall on, you touched on a couple of issues there, flood insurance cost and levies. Let me deal with the latter one first. I think we probably need to get the core here at the table, but I know we're dealing with that issue with a number of Pennsylvania communities right now where a levee that was built, as Steve told me, got real close up in Wilkesboro, but you know they're having challenges with that levee. So that's something that the Corps is reevaluating, and those are significant dollars that are spent there, tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars on building a levee. And then as someone said, you have the operation and maintenance, which is an ongoing responsibility. So it's not an easy task there, and I know that the Corps has said, for example, to several communities, raising the levee is not a feasible activity right now. They've got huge backlogs, and they do not feel that it would meet benefit costs. But again, maybe we should get the colonel or someone from, I believe it's a Baltimore Corps that is in this area to come up with some of his staff and talk about those issues. Regarding flood insurance, after Bigger Waters was passed, then there's been an Affordability Act. One of the things that Congress has required, and I believe, Bill, maybe you know more than I do, I believe we're going to have an affordability study that's going to come back. I believe it's this fall, maybe in another month or two, but it's coming back, and that's the challenge right now with losses rising around the country, and it's not, we had Irene and Lee here in Pennsylvania, Sandy in New Jersey and New York, obviously going back to Katrina, that was kind of the one that got us into, if you will, the hole. Where we're at now is we have a program which we think is a great program. Again, okay, so it funds my salary, so yeah, I like it. But it's a good program, and for many years it was not a moneymaker for the federal government, but we weren't losing money either. All of a sudden along come Katrina, and we're a lot of money in the hole. And right now where we stand, and again, it's not one disaster, so it's not something we can say, oh, this is a Katrina problem. Sandy has added to the problem. So have Irene and Lee and other events throughout the country. The program's about $25 billion in the hole. So that's the question, and that's the tough one that they're dealing with in Washington right now is, so how do we have something that people around the country can afford, but something that provides a program where we're not constantly going back and borrowing money from the Treasury. So that's a balancing act that I think has to be played out, and I can assure you, Congressman said it's not always rational in Washington, but I can tell you, if it was easy, they would have figured this out by now.
I think that's
It's
why-
not an easy
I think that's
solution.
what's so important. What I'm really trying to drive this at is,
Yeah.
people say, what do we do about the flood insurance? Bigger waters, how do we fix it? At the same point, you have an insurance program that's going broke because the cost of these disasters keep rising, so you're trying to get a risk-based insurance. But on the other hand, people can't afford a risk-based insurance the way it is. So what do you do? I mean, so the only answer I'm coming up with is we've got to look at mitigation, reducing the cost of these disasters.
Totally agree.
I mean, how else are you going to fix it? You're stuck between a rock and a hard place where people can't afford the risk-based insurance. At the same time, the program can't survive because the cost of disasters keep rising. Well, then the only answer is we've got to lower the cost of disasters. And that's what, I know it's difficult, but I think we really have to drive that home, that if we're serious about doing something about the cost and making a program work that's going broke, the only answer I can see is we got to reduce the cost of disasters. If somebody else wants to, we'll get there.
Just excellent points coming from all sectors of the room. Just to underscore something we've seen in CRS, what we're talking about here involves many cross-cutting elements of a community's operation. I'm sure, everyone in this room I know has familiarity with the complex nature of how to handle flood risk. Certainly the options for potentially newly built buildings, that's a very different suite of solutions than existing infrastructure. Certainly the points related to lost revenue are critically important for communities. As Mari has touched on with the reference to the user groups, one benefit about CRS is that it's a way to get started. It's a way for a community to begin engaged in a community of practice, learn from each other, vent with each other, trade success stories with each other. What we have seen, there are now 40 of these user groups nationwide. We have seen individuals from communities that have a passion to make the community better off, building support from each other and starting from the ground up. It's very difficult to know for any one community what their best solution is, but certainly it's important to get started and get started in the relationship building and the understanding. And so I think the EMI classes down in Emmitsburg, Maryland, the CRS user groups, follow-up work we can do with communities that are specifically interested, the availability of our field staff to meet with communities. We've actually simplified the application process. All of these opportunities are a way to get started. And certainly with major flooding disasters come grants and meeting opportunities. And what we see are the communities that have already gotten started understanding the complex nature of how these cross-cutting issues collide. They seem to be in a better position to then aggressively pursue grant monies.
Though I can tell you the venting part usually comes through my office.
We know.
We got another question.
Yes, good morning. My name is Rich Kistner. I'm with Columbia County Housing and Redevelopment Authorities. Dealing with flooding is not something we typically do, but after the last flood, we were administering the CDBG program for the county, so we applied for CDBG-VR funding. And so we had a really crash course on what kind of flooding issues we had in the county. And my concern and question is with the remapping and some significant areas, in particular Scott Township, there's going to be a lot more homeowners that are going to end up being in the areas that are going to need to have flood insurance. And we talked about communication and education, and right now it seems like there's really nothing out there to inform home buyers or homeowners in these areas that are going to be impacted. And as Bill mentioned, folks could be upside down, once that happens. We've asked for some CDBG-VR money to have somebody bring in some capacity to be able to educate people in our county and elsewhere about the impact, so that we don't have folks making large investments in homes that may not be worth much down the road. I have one young friend who happened to be in that situation, and I told him, get out of there, get out when you can. He sold his home, but I'm sure he sold it to someone else that I don't know that's going to be impacted. So my question is there anything that we can do to educate folks as to what may be coming down the road?
Not sure where things are in the mapping process, and there's always concerns, especially when things are changing. One of the things that we've done, and again, it takes some help from the community. There's our outreach guy over there, Mr. Bollinger, Dave Bollinger. We have found that, again, it takes some effort, getting a location, getting the word out. But one thing that we have done primarily along the coast, since that is, you know, a lot of things have changed dramatically along the coast, we've done open houses. And I don't know, I'll be honest with you, whether that's the right way to go for Columbia County, but that's certainly something we can talk to you about. It involves, again, getting a facility maybe like this, getting the word out to folks, and literally people can come in, and it's not a round table like this format. There is some discussion, but there's a lot of time with people going to insurance specialists and meeting and talking about their particular situation, their risk. You know, the map's changing the community, and the first question is, so what does that mean for my house? You know, don't care as much about the neighbors, but they want to know my house. What's this going to mean for me? And you know, we find that it's tough to answer all those questions on a large scale because, again, community officials with limited capability. We send the maps to the community officials, and you know, when you've got, like you said, a part-time secretary that's in Tuesday morning and Thursday afternoon, you know, who knows what that person may have an experience with mapping. So I think that's the type of thing that we have to do. We do have regular meetings, but when the maps come out, but those meetings, which we call CCO, Community Coordination and Outreach Meetings, those focus on the community officials. The open house focuses on the citizens and businesses, so that's certainly something we can look into. I don't know where we are with the mapping process, but I would suggest get with Dave and we can talk about that.
We're going to wrap this up. I have one last question I want to.
Thank you. I just want to share a couple comments. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any answers, but some observations. Can everybody hear me all right so far? Yeah, I don't want to squeak. I like the juice. I'll get to that. Mitigation isn't worth it. I think that at the local level, 2,500 municipalities, it's difficult for mitigation to be worth it on a municipality by municipality basis. You know, Dolphin's trying to move forward in county direction. But a sarcastic question would be, when you acquire a property, who's mowing the grass? County Commissioner? We acquired a property in Monroe Township, Snyder County. We went through the hazard mitigation plan. Borton Lawson came down, Wyoming Valley Levee Raising Project. We got in the CRS system about 10 years ago. It was all paid for with the money left over from levee raising. And you send your projects out to the county evaluates and decides which projects they're going to pursue year to year. And we had a property or two acquired. Okay, now we acquired the property. Who's going to take care of it? We've got to hire a guy to mow the grass or keep the brush clear. So we're all proud that we took care of the repetitive loss. But now the county's like, well, we don't want to, Monroe, you want this? Well, we don't want it. You keep it. You bought the property. So we got to deal with that. You know, maybe you can install a levee, or you can put a strategic baffle in an outfall pipe to not allow backwater. But again, on a 2,500 municipality basis, I don't know that any one municipality might be able to cost benefit. To do something, who are they going to save or what are they going to save? It might need to be more big picture from a mitigation standpoint. Something that's been very frustrating is what I call a moving target with the base flood elevations. We touched on it a couple of times. You know, the policy went into effect in 1968. By the mid-70s into the early 80s, we all had our flood insurance reports, flood insurance studies. And we lived with them for 35 years. And we took 10 years to figure them out, and then we spent 25 years dealing with them. And 06, 07, around here, the flood insurance studies got revised. And in the county I work most in, which is Snyder, that flood insurance study got put in place in November of 2007. And the recession hits, whenever, 08, people were flying high, and things, by 09, we were down. Well, Snyder County is not your most urban county in the state. There's not too many real estate transactions took place once the new flood insurance study got put in place, and we shut down for 4 or 5 years. 2012, 2013, starting to sell properties. We need a flood insurance certificate. I never was in the flood zone. What? I need a flood certificate. I want a flood certificate for. And we're starting to now deal in 11 and 12 with the 07 map revision. And new people have been put into the floodplain, and the floodplain's higher. And we're working our way through that, adjusting to the new study. And no sooner do we have that happen, we find out it's going to happen again. Hurricane Lee hit, we ran out here, studied 100 miles of the Susquehanna River, and here's best available mapping. I know you guys, some of you I've talked to already. They studied 100 miles from Snyder Juniata Line to Kingston Swearersville. It's going up anywhere from 7/10 to 4 feet in Kingston. Well, my first question was, you spent how many tens of millions of dollars in that levee? What's going to happen to that levee with the new base flood? They said, well, we've been studying it, and it looks like about half that levee is still going to be good, and about half that levee won't. What's going to happen to half the levee won't? And I humorously turned to the city of Sunbury. Where's Jim? What's that going to do to Sunbury flood wall? Sunbury's had no losses, and that's wonderful. It truly is. They need to be rewarded for that. But if our 100-year base flood is going to go up 2 or more feet around here, they're going to not be in compliance. So we talk about the big Army Corps. There's your mitigation. You have to put the mitigation in to save 10,000 property owners in Sunbury, and it's going to cost how many $100 million to put that wall up. Now maybe I'm wrong, maybe it only cost $20 million because they only got to put the wall up 2 feet along the river. The work was done 7 years ago. But going up 7/10 of a foot to 4 feet in this 100-mile stretch just has me scratching my head. I know that the Corps and the consultant and the FEMA region have all been working on that. And what I'm told from a simplistic standpoint is you look at the supposed 100-year events we've had in the last 10 to 15 years, and it takes your curve of 100-year elevations and just raises it. So statistically, the 100-year flood, if we ever get another 100-year flood, it's going to be so much higher than what we've already experienced. I don't know that we can overcome that anytime soon. I don't know that the CRS system is going to put a pebble in the water on the issues associated with that. So that moving target issue, I sure hope that the cross checks and the back checks are put in place before that new flood insurance study comes out in 2018. As you know, we did it in 75, we did it in 07, now we're going to do it in 18 again, and a dramatic increase from 7 to 18. Now that we're getting into climate discussions, which I don't think anybody in this room wants to go there, but for some reason, what's making this stuff jump so fast? So the flood and dealing with the certs, you got to get a cert before you raise your property. Then when the property's done, you got to come back and get the cert again. So your homeowner that's in a $60,000 to $80,000 house, fortunately, he might get $30,000 from an event to raise his property, but he's got to pay these other costs too. And then if you're in the CRS system, you've got the paper pusher in the township that you've hired that's got to keep all this documentation in place, and the cost of compliance, I think, is a huge thing to overcome too. So I'm not so sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, because if you live in downtown Milton and you're in a $60,000 house and you have a full basement, you're going around telling your friends, in 72 I only had 2 feet of water on the first floor. Well, that means you're about 12 feet above the base flood elevation or you're 12 feet above because you've got to go with your lowest floor, which is your basement. So these people are walking around thinking they're only 1 to 2 foot, or maybe it's never been on my first floor. I've never had water on my first floor. It's been right up to the rafters. You know the stories you've all heard. Well, that means they're 8 feet below the base flood, and their insurance is going to be $17,000. How many CRS cities, communities, are getting 45% discount? Isn't that one in the United States? So most of the CRS communities are getting 5, 10, maybe 15, maybe 20. What's Harrisburg get?
There's 6.
There's 6. Does that give them 20, 25? 20. So you're talking most communities get 5, 10, or 15. my flood insurance is $15,000, and my community's done everything they're supposed to do, and they've got us in at an 8, and I get a 10% discount, I still gotta pay $13,000, and I'm still mad at my local people for all the money they spent getting into CRSs. So there's some observations, and whether a community's in CRS or not in CRS, that might be a function of what the community leader is going to get in his year. But what this is about are the property owners. It's about the property owners, which there aren't many here except those of us that own the property we live in. We're the landlords. But the property owners in those river towns that can't afford their mortgage, they're going to have to qualify not only for a mortgage anymore, they got to qualify to be able to pay the flood insurance with the rollover. And I don't see how the CRS can come along quick enough, put enough bang into it to give the masses of people the help they're going to need. You know, in 3 to 5 years, those premiums are going to be where Bigger Waters put them in 1 year. We've slowed it down, but I don't know that this engine can go fast enough. 25 communities in 25 years, if they double the communities in the next 5 years and get to 50, how many do we have? 2,500? It'll be a huge success if they double the community involvement in 5 years, but still, where's that going to leave you dealing with this issue down the road? I'm sorry I don't have the answers, but I wanted to give you some street level observations.
Thank you. And, you know, I think you summed it up pretty well. You know, what a difficult issue this is and why we're doing this, what we're doing today, is really trying to find a way forward, especially here where we deal with this, where the residents, as you said many times, are trapped in these river towns. They're literally trapped between insurance premiums, being able to sell their house, and what do you do? And the local officials, whether it be on the county or supervisors or mayors who hear it and feel the frustration of, number one, we don't have the money to even get into this program and deal with it. We have part-time staffs, you know.
I'll tell you one last thing. Communication is an issue. This is a federal issue. FEMA is a federal. As things evolve with FEMA, it would be good to get the word to at least the state politicians. A lot of times the state politicians don't even know this is happening unless we backdoor them with stories like this.
Yeah. So I want to thank you again for participating. And I just want to remind everyone that I have district staff here today. Joe Gertis, my district director. Peggy, who's right here in Sunbury. Bruce, out of the Harrisburg office. Mike is in the Hazleton office, and they can point you in the right direction here after we're done if we want to further any more discussion. I want to thank you all so much for joining me in this conversation and joining me in the commitment to tackling disaster costs and the losses that we see right here at home. I want to thank our presenters and the attendees. I appreciate your candor, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And I commit to all of you that I'm going to continue this conversation, not only here at home, but in Washington, D.C. I hope everyone will take some time to visit the tables around the room and exchange contact information. If no one has any further to add, this roundtable is concluded. Thank you.